She cried when he touched her wound. Never knowing his hands were shaking harder than hers, the wind on Red Mesa sounded like a low, tired whistle, sliding through dry grass and the broken ribs of old fences. The sky was wide and cold, full of hard stars. In a place like this, the past did not stay buried. It rode with the dust and waited in the dark. Cal Rourke kept his ranch lights dim. He did it for practical reasons, he told himself. Less power draw, less attention, less trouble, but the truth sat deeper than that. Bright lights made things feel too exposed, like a stage. Cal did not want an audience. He was out late because the eastern water pump had been acting up again. The colony town had sent a message earlier in the day. Storm line coming in, pressure drop, watch your stock. That meant the pump would fail at the worst time. So Cal saddled his rangy trail horse, Cutter, and rode the long ridge trail with a tool bag tied behind the saddle. The planet had once been called Sector 9 Delta, like it was a box on a map. The settlers called it Red Mesa because the cliffs glowed rusty in the sunrise. It was a frontier world where people pretended they lived simple, but most homes still had a hidden battery bank and a few pieces of tech that could save a life. A man could ride a horse in the morning and solder a comm unit at night. Cal liked it that way, quiet, honest work. No uniforms, no orders. Cutter's hooves knocked softly on stone as they climbed. Cal listened to the night. He could tell a lot from sound. The scrape of a lizard, the wing beat of a night hawk, the distant hum of the town's power grid. Tonight there was something else. A faint crackle, like static caught in the air. Cal slowed. He turned his head toward the north ravine where the old cargo route cut through the cliffs. At first he thought it was lightning far off. Then the sky flashed again, sharper, brighter, and the sound followed a heartbeat later. A short thunderclap, too fast, too close. Cutter snorted and shifted under him. Cal's stomach tightened. That was no storm. He urged the horse forward along the ridge until the path opened to a view of the ravine. Smoke rose in a thin column, black against the stars. A small fire burned where it had no business burning, down among the rocks. A crash, Cal muttered. He should have turned back. That was what he always told himself to do when trouble looked for him. Let the town sheriff handle it. Let the patrol drones do their rounds. Let someone else be brave. But his hands were already pulling Cutter toward the switchback trail. His body moved before his thoughts could stop it. The path down was steep. Loose shale slid under the horse's feet. Cal kept his weight light and his voice calm, whispering to Cutter until they reached the bottom. The smell hit him first, burnt fuel and hot metal. Then he saw the wreck. It was a transport pod, the kind used for short hops between ranches and the town. Its hull was cracked open like an egg. A section of the side lay torn away, exposing twisted seats and hanging wires. Sparks flickered from a broken panel. The emergency beacon blinked a weak red pulse. Cal dismounted, tied Cutter to a rock spur, and moved in slow, careful steps. He kept low, eyes scanning, no movement at first. Then he heard it, a small sound, a breath that rattled. Cal's throat went dry. He followed the sound and found her. She lay half inside the wreck, half on the ground, as if she had crawled out and lost strength at the last second. Her hair was dark and dusty, stuck to her forehead. Her clothes were torn, not work clothes, but the kind people wore on the clean side of town. She was holding her side with both hands. Blood soaked through her fingers, dark in the starlight. Her eyes were open, wide with fear and pain. Cal knelt beside her, careful not to jolt the wreck. "Hey," he said softly. "You're alive, that's good. Can you hear me?" Her lips moved, but only a broken sound came out. Cal checked the wreck for fire risk. The fuel line was leaking, but the wind was light. Still, it could ignite. He needed to get her away from the pod. He reached toward her, slow and clear, like he was approaching a wild animal. "It's okay," he said. "I'm going to help you. I won't hurt you." The moment his hand touched her shoulder, she cried out. It wasn't loud, but it was full of sharp fear, like the pain was deeper than the wound. Her whole body tensed, and she tried to pull away, but she couldn't. Cal froze. For a second he saw another face, another night, another body on dirt. He felt the old memory rise like a wave. His hands started to shake. He hated that. He hated it more than the cold, more than hunger, more than anything. His hands had been steady once. Back when he wore a badge on his chest and a rifle on his back. Back when people trusted him to save them. Now his fingers trembled just holding his own breath. The woman didn't notice. She was focused on her pain. Her eyes were wet, her teeth clenched. Cal forced himself to breathe. "Easy," he said. "I'm going to move you away from this wreck. There's a fuel leak." Can you try to help by pushing with your legs? She swallowed hard and nodded once. Cal slid one arm behind her shoulders and the other under her knees. He lifted slowly, biting back the panic that tightened his chest. She hissed and cried again when her injured side shifted. I'm sorry, Cal said. I know. He carried her a few yards to a flat patch of sand behind a boulder where the wind was blocked. He lowered her gently and opened his tool bag. He didn't have a full med kit, but he had basic supplies: disinfectant, gauze, seal tape, and a small injector of pain blocker for emergencies. He shone a small light over her side. The wound was ugly. A long cut, maybe from jagged metal. It needed cleaning and pressure. Cal's hands shook harder now. He tried to hide it by moving slow. The woman watched him. Her breath came in short bursts. Don't, she whispered. Don't touch, Cal paused. I have to, he said quietly. If we leave it, you'll get worse. I'll be gentle, I swear. Her eyes squeezed shut and a tear slipped down her cheek. She nodded again like she was giving up because she had no strength left. Cal poured disinfectant over the cut. She cried out and grabbed his wrist. Her fingers were cold but strong. Cal's whole arm trembled under her grip. He felt his heart pounding like a drum. He kept his voice steady. Hold on, he said. Breathe with me. In, out, good, that's it. He packed gauze against the wound, then used seal tape to keep it tight. It wasn't perfect, but it would slow the bleeding. He injected a small dose of pain blocker in her upper arm. She blinked at him, confused, then her face softened a little as the sharp edge of pain eased. What's your name? Cal asked. For a moment she looked like she wouldn't answer. Then she whispered, Mara. Cal nodded. Mara, I'm Cal, you're safe for now. Her eyes searched his face as if she was trying to decide if that was true. What happened? He asked. Did someone do this to you? Mara swallowed. She shook her head, but it didn't feel like a clear answer, more like she couldn't speak. Cal looked back at the wreck. The emergency beacon should have called local patrol, unless someone had disabled it. He walked over, keeping his body between Myra and the pod in case something moved inside. The beacon was blinking, but weak. The comm antenna was snapped. The internal black box panel had been torn open. That was not from crashing. Someone had wanted this pod quiet. Cal's stomach tightened again. He returned to Mara and crouched beside her. Can you stand? She tried. Her legs shook and she sagged. No, she whispered. Cal looked at Cutter. The horse could carry extra weight, but a wounded person bouncing in a saddle could reopen the injury. Cal had another option. His ranch had an old hover sled for hauling feed. It was slow but stable. But the sled was at home, far up the ridge. He made a choice. He lifted Mara carefully again. This time she didn't cry as loudly. The pain blocker was working, but she still trembled. Cal carried her to Cutter and adjusted the saddle blankets into a wider pad. I'm going to tie you in so you don't fall, he said. Okay. Mara nodded faintly. Cal secured her with straps, supporting her back. Cutter stood still like he understood the moment. Cal mounted behind her, wrapping one arm around her to hold her steady, keeping pressure off the wound. His hands shook again, and he hated that she might feel it, but she was too tired. Her head leaned back against his chest for a second, then she pulled away as if remembering she didn't trust anyone. Cal turned Cutter toward home. They climbed the switchback trail slowly. The air grew colder. Mara's breathing evened out. Cal kept his eyes moving, scanning the ridges for lights or motion. Halfway up, Mara spoke again, barely a sound. Why are you helping me? Cal swallowed. The real answer sat behind his ribs like a stone. He was helping because he couldn't stand to walk away again. Because once, long ago, he had walked away when he should have stayed. Because he still saw the faces. But he didn't say that. He said the simple truth that was safe. Because you were there, he replied. And you needed help. When they reached his ranch, Cal moved quickly. He brought Myra inside the small house and laid her on the couch. The house smelled like leather, oil, and coffee. Simple, lived in, no extra comforts. He lit a stove lamp and grabbed his real med kit from a cabinet. He cleaned the wound again, better this time, and wrapped it tighter. He gave her water. She drank slowly, watching him like she was measuring every movement. Cal set a chair near the couch and sat down, keeping distance so she didn't feel cornered. Cutter whinnied outside, and the ranch dogs barked once, then quieted. For a few minutes there was only the soft crackle of the stove. Myra's eyelids drooped, but before she fell asleep she murmured, "They'll come." Cal leaned forward. "Who will come?" Her eyes opened, sharp with sudden fear. "Don't let them take me." Cal's chest tightened. His hands were still shaking, but he curled them into fists and rested them on his knees. "I won't," he said, and he surprised himself by how steady his voice sounded. Mara stared at him, then her eyes closed again, heavy with exhaustion. Cal sat in the dim light, listening to the night outside. He didn't know who they were. He didn't know why Mara's pod had been cut open, why the beacon had been damaged, or why she looked like someone from a different life than this dusty frontier. But he knew one thing. Trouble had found his ranch. And if it came through his door, Cal Rourke would have to decide if he was still the man who walked away or the man who stayed. Outside, far off in the direction of town, a faint light moved along the horizon, too steady to be a star, too low to be a meteor. A drone. Searching, the morning came slowly over Red Mesa, painting the sky with soft orange light that touched the cliffs and stretched long shadows across Cal Rourke's ranch. The wind had settled during the night, leaving the world quiet except for distant birds and the low hum of the power batteries behind the barn. Cal had not slept much. He sat near the window with a cup of coffee, watching the horizon. His eyes moved constantly, checking the ridge lines, the old fence posts, and the sky for movement. The drone he had seen during the night stayed in his thoughts like a warning bell. Behind him, Mara rested on the couch, wrapped in a heavy blanket. Her breathing was steadier now. The pain blocker had helped, but the wound would take time to heal. Cal had cleaned it again at dawn, replacing the bandage while she slept. He stood slowly and walked outside. The ranch looked normal. The cattle grazed near the south fence. Cutter lifted his head and watched Cal, ears twitching. The dogs trotted along the porch, tails wagging lightly. Everything felt peaceful, but Cal knew peace on the frontier could break without warning. He walked to the small antenna tower beside the barn. The old communication dish turned slowly, scanning frequencies. Cal opened the control panel and checked for signals. There it was again. A faint scanning pulse moving across open channels, not local law enforcement, too quiet, too precise. Cal shut down his external broadcast and switched the system to silent mode. If someone was searching for Mara, he would not make it easy for them. When he stepped back into the house, Mara was awake. She sat upright slowly, holding her side. Her eyes followed him, careful and watchful. "You should stay lying down," Cal said gently. "I slept long enough," she replied. Her voice was soft but stronger than before. Cal handed her a cup of water. She took it, but her gaze never left his face. There was still fear there, but also curiosity. "You live alone?" she asked. "Yes." "No family?" He hesitated. "Not anymore." Mara nodded slowly, as if she understood more than he said. Cal turned away and began cooking a simple meal on the stove, eggs and flatbread. He moved quietly, used to silence. Mara watched his hands as he worked. They trembled slightly when he lifted the pan. "You're hurt too," she said suddenly. Cal paused. "No, your hands," she said softly. "They shake." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he placed food on a plate and set it near her. "Eat," he said. "You need strength." Mara took a small bite. Hunger must have been stronger than her questions because she kept eating, slowly at first, then faster. After a few minutes, she spoke again. "You didn't ask many questions." Cal leaned against the wall, arms crossed loosely. "You'll tell me when you're ready." She looked down at her hands. "What if I never am?" He shrugged slightly. "Then I still help you heal. That's enough for now." Something in his calm tone seemed to unsettle her more than pressure would have. She studied him like she was trying to solve a puzzle. Outside, the dogs barked once. Cal's head snapped toward the door. He moved quickly to the window and looked toward the ridge, nothing visible. Still, the air felt wrong. He grabbed his rifle from the wall, not threatening, just ready, and stepped onto the porch. The desert stretched wide and empty, too empty. Cal walked to the edge of the yard, eyes scanning. He saw faint dust moving far away, almost invisible. A drone. Small, fast, sweeping low across the land. He returned inside immediately. "We may need to leave soon," he said. Mara's face tightened. "They found me." "I don't know yet," Cal replied, "but someone is searching this area." She closed her eyes briefly, as if expecting this moment. When she opened them again, her voice was quieter. "I didn't want to bring danger here." Cal shook his head once. "You didn't bring it. It was already out there." She gave a faint, sad smile at that. They spent the next hour preparing quietly. Cal packed supplies into a travel bag, water, medical gear, tools, and spare energy cells. He checked the old hover sled parked behind the barn. It wasn't fast, but it would keep her stable while she healed. Mara watched from the doorway, leaning against the frame. "You're not afraid?" she asked. Cal adjusted a strap. "I am." Her eyebrows lifted slightly, surprised by his honesty. But fear doesn't decide what I do, he added. She studied him again, her expression softening just a little. The drone passed overhead once, far enough away not to see them clearly. Cal waited until it disappeared beyond the hills before moving again. Inside the house, Mara finally spoke more openly. They're not simple hunters, she said. They have resources, technology, authority. Who are they? Cal asked. She hesitated, fighting with herself. People who think I belong to them. Cal's jaw tightened. He didn't ask more yet. He could see she was pushing against old fear just to say that much. The sun climbed higher, heat settling over the ranch. Cal helped Mara onto the hover sled. She winced but did not cry out this time. You'll be safe where we're going? She asked. For now, he replied. There's an old canyon shelter, hard to scan, not many know about it. He started the sled and it hummed softly to life. They moved slowly across the land, Cutter following behind. The journey felt long even though it wasn't far. Every shadow looked like movement. Every sound made Cal's muscles tighten. Mara watched him carefully. You've done this before, she said quietly. Done what? Protected someone? Cal didn't answer. His eyes stayed on the horizon. After a while she said, and you lost them. The words hit harder than he expected. His hands tightened on the controls, trembling more for a moment before he forced them still. Yes, he said finally. Silence followed, but it felt different now, not empty, but shared. They reached the canyon shelter by midday. It was hidden beneath an overhang covered by old camouflage netting. Inside were basic supplies left from another life Cal rarely spoke about. He helped Mara settle on a bedroll. She lay back, breathing slowly. You don't even know me, she said. Cal sat nearby, cleaning dust from his rifle. I know enough. What if I'm dangerous? He glanced at her. Then we deal with that when it comes. She laughed softly, surprised by him again. As evening approached, the sky turned deep red. Cal cooked a simple stew over a small heater. Myra watched the flames flicker. I wasn't running because I'm guilty, she said suddenly. I was running because I know something they don't want revealed. Cal looked at her but didn't interrupt. They'll come again, she continued. And when they do, they won't stop at scanning. Cal nodded slowly. Outside, a distant hum echoed through the canyon. Both of them froze. The sound grew louder. Another drone, closer this time. Cal stood, every sense sharp. Myra's eyes widened with fear, but she didn't look away from him. He gave a small, steady nod. We're not running tonight, he said quietly. And for the first time since she met him, Myra believed he meant it. The drone's hum echoed through the canyon like a distant swarm of insects. Cal stood at the entrance of the shelter, his eyes focused on the narrow slice of sky above the red rock walls. The sound grew louder, then softer, then louder again as if the machine was searching carefully, moving in slow patterns. Behind him, Mara sat upright on the bedroll. Her breathing had quickened, but she stayed silent. She watched Cal closely, studying every small movement. Cal raised his hands slightly, signaling for quiet even though she had not made a sound. The drone passed overhead, its shadow sliding across the rocks for only a moment before disappearing again. Cal waited several minutes before relaxing his shoulders. They're getting closer, Mara whispered. Yes, he said simply. He moved back into the shelter and checked the small equipment panel built into the rock wall. Old signal jammers blinked faintly, creating a soft interference field that made scanning harder. They were not perfect, but they helped. Mara watched him work. His hands still trembled slightly when he adjusted wires. She noticed he paused often, taking small breaths as if steadying himself. You don't have to do this, she said quietly. He glanced at her. Do what? Risk everything for me? Cal sat down on a crate across from her. For a moment he looked tired, older than before. I already made the choice, he replied. Silence settled between them again, but it felt heavier now. After a while, Myra spoke. You deserve the truth. Cal waited. She looked down at her hands. The people chasing me, they are not criminals, at least not officially. They work under authority, the Colonial Oversight Council. Cal's eyes narrowed slightly. That name carried weight across frontier worlds. The council claimed to keep order between distant colonies, but many settlers believed they controlled more than they admitted. Why would they hunt you? He asked. Mara hesitated. Because I found something they want hidden. She swallowed, gathering courage. I was part of their research division, she continued. I studied data coming from remote colonies, trade routes, security logs, missing shipments. At first it looked like random accidents, but when I looked deeper, I found patterns. What kind of patterns? Whole settlements losing supplies, patrol routes changing without explanation, people disappearing from official records. Her voice trembled slightly. Someone inside the council is using frontier worlds as testing grounds. They are experimenting with controls, seeing how much they can change before people notice. Cal leaned back slowly. That sounded dangerous, but also believable. "And you took proof?" he asked. "Yes," she said. "I copied files. I thought I could bring them to someone who would expose the truth, but they found out." Her eyes lifted to meet his. "They tried to stop me before I left the station. I escaped in a transport pod. I didn't expect to survive the crash." Cal felt a slow anger rise in his chest. Not loud or wild, just cold and steady. "They'll keep coming," he said. "Yes." He stood and walked toward the canyon entrance again. The sky had darkened into evening colors, purple and gold stretching across the horizon. For a moment he allowed himself to feel the weight of the situation. He had tried to live quietly, tried to leave behind fights and responsibility, but trouble had followed him anyway. Behind him, Mara shifted carefully. "You should leave," she said softly. "Take your horse. Go somewhere far. If they find you helping me, they will not forgive it." Cal did not turn around. "I've heard that before," he said. She frowned slightly. "What do you mean?" He took a slow breath. Memories rose uninvited, flashes of shouting voices, smoke, people trusting him to lead them to safety. "I used to wear a badge," he said quietly. "Frontier Protection Unit. We were sent to keep peace in remote places. One mission went wrong. People died because of a decision I made. After that, I walked away." Mara listened carefully. "I thought if I stopped being responsible for others, no one else would get hurt because of me," he continued. "So I built this ranch and stayed alone. And now?" she asked gently. Cal finally turned back toward her. His eyes were steady but tired. "Now you're here." Mara held his gaze. Something shifted between them, a silent understanding built from shared pain. Outside, the drone returned, louder this time. A beam of scanning light swept across the canyon walls, briefly illuminating the entrance. Cal moved quickly, activating the jammer at full strength. The lights inside flickered. "They're narrowing their search," he said. "What do we do?" Mara asked. "We don't stay here long," he replied. "There's another place, an abandoned rail station beyond the northern ridge. Old tunnels, hard to track." She nodded, trusting him now without hesitation. They packed quickly. Cal helped her stand. She moved more carefully than before, but her strength was returning. The journey north began under fading sunlight. Cal guided the hover sled through narrow paths hidden between rocks. Mara sat quietly, watching the landscape pass by. After a while, she spoke again. "You're not fearless," she said. Cal gave a small, dry smile. "No, but you keep moving anyway." He didn't answer, but she could see the truth in his eyes. The rail station appeared near midnight, a broken structure half buried by sand. Rusted tracks stretched into darkness. Old tunnels yawned open like sleeping giants. Cal stopped the sled and listened carefully. No movement except the wind. Inside the tunnel, the air felt cooler. He set up a small light and helped Mara settle onto a crate. "We rest here for a few hours," he said. Mara nodded, then hesitated. "There's more," she said. "About the files I carry." Cal looked at her. "They don't just expose corruption," she continued. "They include access codes. If used correctly, they could reveal everything publicly, but it means confronting them directly." "And you want to do that?" Cal said. "Yes," she whispered. Fear flickered across his face. "That's dangerous." "I know." He turned away, pacing slowly. Every instinct told him to run farther, hide deeper. But another part of him, the part he had buried, wanted to stand and fight. Mara watched him struggle. "I trust you," she said softly. Those words hit him harder than any accusation. He stopped walking. Outside, distant engines echoed, larger than drones this time. "Search ships." Cal closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them again, something had changed. He looked at Mara and nodded once. "Then we stop running," he said. Her eyes widened slightly. "We make a plan," he continued. "And when they come, we face them on our terms." Mara felt a strange, calm settle over her. For the first time since she fled, she was not alone. And somewhere deep inside Cal, the man he used to be began to wake again, not fearless, not perfect, but ready to stand when it mattered most. Night wrapped around the abandoned rail station like a heavy blanket. The old metal tracks stretched into darkness, half buried under sand and years of silence. Wind moved softly through broken beams, making low sounds that echoed inside the tunnel. Cal stood near the entrance, watching the horizon. The faint lights of search ships moved slowly across the sky, growing brighter as they approached. They were not rushing. They were confident. Myra sat behind him on a crate, holding a small data device close to her chest. The files she carried felt heavier now, not just because of danger, but because of the choice ahead. "You don't have to stay," she said quietly. "Even now." Cal didn't look back. "We already talked about that." "Yes," she said softly, "but I need you to understand. Once we do this, your quiet life is gone." Cal watched a distant light sweep across the desert. For a moment he thought of his ranch, the simple house, the dogs, Cutter waiting in the yard. He had built that life carefully, piece by piece, trying to forget who he used to be. But he had never truly escaped himself. "I didn't lose my life," he said slowly. "I just paused it." Myra watched him, understanding the meaning behind his words. Cal turned and walked back into the tunnel. He spread a small map across an old metal table. The map showed the canyon paths, the abandoned rails, and the nearby ridges. "They'll approach from the sky first," he said. "Drones to scan, then ground teams." Mara nodded. "They prefer control. They'll try to capture without damage." "That gives us time," Cal replied. He began setting small devices along the tunnel entrance, signal reflectors and old mining sensors. Nothing deadly, just tools to confuse scanners and slow pursuit. Mara watched his hands as he worked. They still trembled slightly, but his movements were confident, focused. "You were good at this," she said quietly. "I used to be," he answered. "You still are." He didn't reply, but her words stayed with him. Hours passed as they prepared. Cal showed Mara how to use a small transmitter connected to the data files. If they could reach a high enough signal point, they could send the information across open networks where it could not be hidden. "We just need a window," he explained. "A few seconds without interference. And they will try to stop that," she said. "Yes." The sky outside turned pale as morning approached. The first search ship descended slowly, its engines humming like distant thunder. Smaller drones followed, sweeping across the desert. Myra felt her heart race. Cal placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "Stay close," he said. She nodded. The first drone entered the canyon, scanning with bright beams. Cal activated the reflectors. The beams bounced strangely, sending false signals back to the machine. It hesitated, recalculating. "They're confused," Mara whispered. "For now," Cal replied. A voice suddenly echoed from outside, amplified through a speaker. "Mara," it called calmly, "you are requested to surrender peacefully. You will not be harmed." She froze. Cal's jaw tightened. "Stay focused," the voice continued. "The man assisting you does not need to suffer consequences. Step forward alone." Mara looked at Cal. Fear and doubt flickered across her face. "They know your name," she said. "They always find out," he replied quietly. The drones moved closer. One fired a small scanning pulse that made the tunnel lights flicker. Cal activated the next part of his plan. Small charges released clouds of mineral dust into the air, creating interference that blocked visual scans. "Now," he said, "we move." They ran deeper into the tunnel toward an old service ladder leading up to the ridge above. Cal helped Mara climb carefully despite her injury. Above them, the sky opened wide. The search ship hovered nearby, engines rumbling. Cal positioned the transmitter on a rock ledge. "This is the best signal point," he said. "Once you start, don't stop." Mara connected the data device. Her fingers trembled, but her eyes were steady. "Ready?" she asked. Cal scanned the sky. Drones were already turning toward them. "Do it." She pressed the activation button. A beam of light shot upward from the transmitter, linking to distant satellites. Data began streaming rapidly. Warning lights flashed on the device. "They're trying to block it," she said. Cal lifted his rifle, not to attack, but to disable incoming drones. He fired carefully, striking one machine's sensor, causing it to spin away. Another drone fired a stunned pulse that hit the ground near him, sending dust into the air. His hands shook harder now, adrenaline rushing through him. Memories tried to break his focus, old failures, lost voices, but he forced himself to stay present. "Almost there," Mara said. The voice from the ship returned, louder now. "Stop this transmission immediately." Cal ignored it. Another drone approached fast. He aimed, breathing slowly, steadying his shaking hands. "Not today," he muttered. He fired. The drone dropped from the sky. Mara watched him, realizing something important. His strength was not the absence of fear. His strength was choosing to act while afraid. "Transmission at 80%, she said. The ship moved closer, engines roaring. Wind blasted around them. Cal stood firm, shielding the transmitter with his body. 90%. A final wave of interference struck the signal, making the beam flicker. Mara clenched her teeth. "Come on," the device beeped sharply. "Complete." The beam faded. For a moment, everything went silent. The search ship hovered, then slowly pulled back. The drones retreated, their purpose lost. Myra stared at the sky, disbelief filling her eyes. "It's done," she whispered. "The files are public, they can't hide it anymore." Cal lowered his rifle slowly. The shaking in his hands eased, replaced by a quiet calm. The ship's voice returned, colder now. "You have made your choice." Then the ship turned and disappeared into the sky. Mara sat down heavily, relief washing over her. Tears filled her eyes, but this time they were not from fear. "You helped me save them," she said softly. Cal sat beside her. "You saved yourself," he replied. They stayed on the ridge until the sky turned bright blue. The desert looked peaceful again, as if nothing had happened. After a while, Mara spoke. "What will you do now?" Cal thought about the ranch, the quiet life he had tried to build. He realized something had changed inside him. The weight he carried felt lighter. "I think," he said slowly, "I go home." She smiled gently. "And me?" she asked. "You decide where you belong," he answered. She looked out across the wide land. "Maybe here for a while." They returned to the ranch together. The dogs greeted them with happy barks. Cutter snorted softly as if relieved to see them. As Cal opened the gate, he noticed his hands. They were still, not because fear had disappeared, but because he had accepted it. Myra watched him from behind, understanding without words. The frontier stretched endlessly ahead, full of unknown paths. But this time, neither of them felt alone.